the craziness surrounding the Sons of Thunder album when that came out.
Yeah.
I remember it came out, and then it was kind of like there was a bad mix on it, and then it ended up getting remixed. And maybe talk a bit about that, because I thought that record with the songs that were on it were great progression from what Return to Heaven Denied, with the kind of music you wrote on that. And then there was this huge, I don't know, controversy, fight, or whatever the case maybe was going on with that record at the time. I remember getting the Japanese version of it, and it was a little bit different than and stuff. So let's talk about that, because that's an interesting story.
Yeah, sure. No, there's no big secret behind it, and there's no problem with talking about it. First of all, it's been everything and the contrary of everything has been said about that album. And since this negative atmosphere going around it, after 20 years, we perceive it as an album which did really bad. Let me tell you, it didn't at all. Sales-wise, Return to Heaven Denied sold much less than Songs of Thunder. So the album went in the charts, and it sold really good. So the reason why we're talking this way about it is that, as you can hear when you listen to it, things were not going good. Why? What happened? Well, it's long story short. Our label, after the success of Return to Heaven Denied, of course, wanted to push things to a higher level. And the first move was to hire a producer, namely Neil Cannon. Nick Cannon is a great producer. He just realized some very good albums. The last one I remember before us was producing Nevermore.
Yeah.
So it looked like being the right guy for the band. And anyway, we were still young and not so experienced to say no or to try something different. I remember our personal choice was Wagner, the producer from Megadeth. But it didn't. It wasn't possible. It was too busy at the time. So we say, okay, let's go with Neil Cannon. Why not? I mean, Nevermore are a great band, and they were sounding actually great. So
and the thing is too, he's produced a lot of different, really, been involved with great bands, pop bands, metal bands,
Architecture, many complicated bands. So there was no reason to say it wouldn't be right. What we realized during the recordings, it was completely. How can I say? It was not connected with the music we wanted to realize. Our music was, when he was commenting during the pre-production, he said our music was too complicated in a funny way. Not that we play like architects, spiral architecture or spastic Inc., but he was saying our music was unnecessarily complicated for the style. And he wanted to cut things, and he wanted to make everything sounds in more straight. I don't know how to explain this. Anyway, there was some disagreement with this, but again, we were too young, so we said, okay, you do whatever you want. And the next step during the recordings, an example, was to cut all the solos off. Most of the solos were cut. He didn't want the album to have many solos, because he said that the solos don't belong to this kind of music. And so on and so on. The atmosphere in the studio was really, really bad, really bad. The best player has been sent home right after a few minutes starting the recording. He didn't like the style, so we had to call a sessionist to complete the best parts. And then we went with the guitars. The keyboards were completely cut, and so on. Excuse me a second. And so on. Anyway, when the mix happened, he chose not to have the band around. So he took everything, and he went, I think it was in Texas. He went to a studio in Texas to mix it alone. and he sent the master straight to the label, not even to us. We had no chance to listen to the
Right.
master, to the, and it was not us, but it was the label who back then Metal Blade from their base in Stuttgart, Germany. They flew to Milano. We have been called to Milano. We listened to the mix, and they were informing us the mix was horrible and totally unacceptable.
Yeah.
No guitar solos. I think like two or three guitar solos were left. Most of them were have been replaced with some weird synth, I don't know, whatever arrangement. The vocals have been reduced in terms of choirs, and it was sounding completely different from what you can hear now in the final master. So
Right.
uh, at that point, as a band, we expected the label to give us, I don't know, 1 month to redo things, but they actually gave us 1 week to remix it,
Right.
and we had no producer anymore. So the only thing we could do was to hire the same studio guy who did the recordings, and he had to remix the whole album in less than 1 week. Remixing also meant to re-record guitar solos and some other stuff which were missing because what he didn't add to the master was erased. We had nothing left. So I remember myself recording solos at 3 a.m. in the morning, like Rage of Kings, the song "The Rage of the King." It's me playing a solo at 3 a.m. in a studio with some random amplifier because the stuff was not there anymore.
Right.
And this was the recipe to a big disaster, of course, in terms of sound wise, production wise.
Correct.
But we had no more control on that. I mean, the label came, took the master, they listened to the final version, they said, okay, that sounds good enough, let's go. And they released it because they already had pre-sales, and they wanted to keep it hot and they wanted to put it out and sell it. So that's how it went.
Sure. Did that, that whole crazy situation, was that part of the reason you left the band to begin with? Like, I know you were out of the band for quite a while, and
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely. I totally disagree. I would never let that album be released that way. Uh, what I say, it's strengthened. It's stronger now than back then, of course. But what I was saying back then, I know how to produce an album,
Hmm.
which I did. Now in these days, I'm still producing my own music, and that's the moment when I have learned I am going to produce my own music. But back then, I was a young guitarist, and I was really pissed off because I said I am not willing to have this album released the way it sounds because the songs are there. Just give it a new sound. Just if needed, let's redo it. No problem. I can do it
Right.
in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. Let's redo this and give it the proper production it deserves. I didn't find any support, even from the other guys, but I don't think they're guilty for this. We were too young.
Yeah.
And when business pushes you and everyone around says you can't delay the release, let's put it out. I understand now that some other guys agreed with this plan, and I say, okay, I call myself out
Yeah.
because I was losing the control over my music, and it's the worst thing it may happen to you as a musician, I think.
Sure. Yeah. So you basically proceeded then with Vision Divine for a long time, and
Yeah,
you put out some great records. I mean, I remember you had a second album, then Streams of Consciousness was probably,
yeah,
it's actually still one of my favorite records you've ever done.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that just had, obviously Vision Divine is a bit different from Labyrinth in how a lot of those records sound, which people would say that's power metal, but I would tell people that it's a different sounding band, and in many ways. But Yeah, you did that for a while. Hey, everybody. Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching. And if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. And if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.